Hi, welcome back to Introduction to LD. Today, we are continuing to look at the basic rules and concepts of Lincoln-Douglas debate. Today, we're going to be looking at really two things. We're going to be looking at a resolution. We'll explain what that is in a second. And we'll also be looking at how a debate is judged. So, last session, if you remember, we talked about a lot of speeches and the formats of the speeches and how long the speeches were and who's giving the speeches. But we didn't talk much about what the content of the speeches were, what the speeches are about. And the way to start is by understanding what a resolution is. Now, a resolution, and this is, by the way, something you'll start to notice in a lot of debate circles. Debaters like to take really simple ideas and slap fancy names on them, but they're really still very simple ideas. A resolution is just a statement. That's it. Generally, it's a statement about some moral or ethical issue. Your league, whether you're in the NCFCA or STOA or some other speech and debate league, has a resolution that they've put out most likely by now. So if you don't know what that resolution is, once this session is done, you should definitely go find that. But every league has a resolution. It's a statement about some moral or ethical issue. So, for example, a resolution could be, abortion is wrong. That could be an LD resolution. Generally, though, a resolution won't just make some moral or ethical statement. Instead, it'll say something like this. This thing, it could be all sorts of things, is more valuable or ought to be valued higher than this other thing. It's a little abstract. Let's pick an example. Resolved. National security ought to be valued over privacy. That could be a Lincoln-Douglas resolution. It says this thing, national security, for example, ought to be valued over this thing, privacy. Something else you may have noticed in that is that I put the word resolved before I said the resolution. Every resolution will start with that. It'll say resolved, and then it will have the statement. It doesn't change anything. It's just the resolution. So, with any resolution in Lincoln-Douglas, you have two sides, and understanding this is even more important to understanding a resolution. You have an affirmative side, and you have a negative side. The affirmative side says yes, the resolution is true. The negative side says no, the resolution is false. Now, in order to understand that, it's always good to take a particular example. So let's come up with a fake resolution, and we'll come back to this resolution throughout the course. Do not write your cases for this resolution. Write your cases for your resolution, but this is just an example for us to be able to talk about things. So here's our example resolution. Resolved. When in conflict, governments ought to value safety over liberty. I'll say that again. Resolved. When in conflict, governments ought to value safety over liberty. Okay. Now, throughout the course, we'll use that as an example of how to do a lot of things with the resolution. But for now, let's just ask this. What would the affirmative speaker be saying? The affirmative would be saying yes. When in conflict, governments ought to value safety over liberty. The negative would just be saying the opposite. No, the negative would be saying when in conflict, governments ought to value liberty over safety. So the affirmative is saying safety over liberty, the negative is saying liberty over safety. And that's the affirmative and negative sides in a Lincoln-Douglas round. The affirmative says yes, the negative says no. Now, with these two sides, how do you determine who won? How do you figure out who judges an LD round? So this is very simple, and it'll take no time at all. An LD round is judged by a judge. There will always be at least one who listens to all the arguments, all the cross-examinations, and then decides whether you have persuaded her that the resolution is true or false, or at the very least says who did a better job. So you could win the round on a lot of different things. Your arguments for your side of the resolution could be so good that she says, I think your arguments were better than your opponent's. Or the judge might be saying, I found the affirmative speaker or the negative speaker more persuasive, and so I think they win this round. So when we get into advanced Lincoln Douglas, if you take our advanced LD course, we'll talk a little bit more about how to read a judge and figure out how to adapt your case for a judge. Don't worry about that right now. All you need to know is that the most important thing in a Lincoln Douglas round is the resolution. The resolution is a statement about a moral or ethical issue. The resolution says, normally, one thing ought to be valued over another thing. There's an affirmative and negative side, and a judge decides who was more persuasive, who was the better debater. So that's it. The homework for this course is just a quiz covering the information. So look back over your notes, revisit these ideas. Next time, what we'll do is we'll continue. We'll kind of pick up right where we left back off, and we'll start to look at what a normal LD argument looks like for a resolution. And by looking at that, we'll understand the basic rules and concepts of LD even better.